take time to mention everyone because of time, but I want to mention that we have quite a diverse group of people passionate about building a community and solving the diagnostic problem, leveraging innovative technologies that we are all working on within using a community-based approach.
Hi everyone, good morning or good afternoon. I'm Kersaudy-Kerhoas. I'm a professor of engineering at Hertford University in the UK. I'm really passionate about democratizing access to prototyping, especially in the context of diagnostics, and welcome you all today. Back to you, Harry.
Thank you very much, Marwin. Really interesting intro from you. As part of our agenda for today, we have a few items on that we want to go through as we try to introduce the network and also try to just interact among ourselves as people who are passionate about this very important community. The first on the agenda will be a brief welcome co-presented by myself and Prof. Marwin. We're going to have a presentation by Dr. Collins Otieno on the perspectives of diagnostics R&D in the Global South. That will be shortly followed by a presentation from Zibusiso from the MSF on the importance of user involvement in diagnostic developments. We will then zoom in onto breakout discussions in the room to wrap up the session. So that will be by way of agenda for this 1 hour of getting to know each other and also launching the network. All right, to get started, as a way of speaking to the importance of the network, the global knowledge economy, we have seen so far countries within low and middle income countries have, most especially Africa, have been having very high burdens of infectious diseases, which we all know. However, the workforce that are to develop solutions to that, unfortunately, do not have what it takes to be able to do that. We've seen the mass exodus of these people moving into moving abroad, most especially London, for this kind of global health knowledge and education. And unfortunately, it's very expensive. However, during the pandemic, we have seen how diagnostics were a challenge in the global south, most importantly in low and middle income countries. We have seen most abysmally how supply chains were disrupted and the manufacturing of those things happening further distance away from where they are most needed. And that brings to the question the inequalities associated with the distribution of diagnostics. And for us, that is where we believe developing communities that bring about transformation in this sector is very important. In as much as we are very excited about the network, we feel that a lot have been happening pre-COVID and post-COVID, and even during the COVID-19 pandemic. And we've seen beautiful initiatives like Diagnostic, an African manufacturer of lateral flow tests. We have seen communities around, particularly the Reclone network, that protocols to advance the development of biologics that could overcome the challenges that we were facing, most importantly during the COVID-19 pandemic. And we feel not only were some of these initiatives relevant post the COVID-19 pandemic, but could be leveraged to solving problems around diagnostics, around global health. Around the same time, as we clearly alluded to the fact that there have been a huge exodus of people within the African context and other LMICs moving abroad to get contemporary knowledge that can come back to solve the problem of infectious disease on the continent. We have also seen the outburst of teaching programs developed around which we had initiatives like the Open Bioeconomy Lab, trained researchers in Ghana, Cameroon, and other African countries how to of need. Now, the question is, beyond this, what can be done? And I think that is where communities like the Frugal Diagnostic Network is important. And the question of what should be happening, as we have rightly seen, there are a lot of advances currently, and for us, we believe that is just a starting point. The imbalance that we have seen in terms of equity in the supply chain, the manufacturing of global diagnostics, and where they are needed, we feel there's the need for a rebalance in equity to ensure that people who actually need it, contexts who actually need it, are benefiting directly. And we, again, we need to start looking at rebalancing exchanges in terms of supports from the North-South collaboration and South-South exchanges that would enhance the knowledge economy associated with developing diagnostics for use at where they are needed. And clearly the models we have seen so far were mainly not sustainable, but how do we create a community that builds sustainability in collaborations that we have seen so far? And that is where we believe the Global North way of dominating the innovation that we've seen so far can be redistributed. And for us, that is where we think the Global Frugal Diagnostic Network can come in to help consolidate some of the synergies, some of the fragmented efforts we have seen in a synergy. I would now move on to get Professor Mawen to come in to talk about why frugal diagnostics are important as part of the network.
Thank you, Harry, and Shannon, if I can get control. Thank you very much. So what is frugal diagnostics? Frugal diagnostics really applies the concept of frugality, that is using imaginatively what is directly available to us in a resource-limited setting to diagnostics. And really, it takes inspiration from frugal science and frugal innovation, that is the development of simple products built by the people who need them the most and will look with locally sourced material. This is a concept that has been made popular in the last 10 years by Manu Prakash at Stanford University. Frugal diagnostic values user-led and participatory and collaborative approaches to design and to recognize decentralized systems of diagnostic development and manufacturing as essential to the creation of sustainable and equitable health systems. So to better illustrate what we mean by frugal diagnostics, I have picked there two very popular examples. So the first one is called the paperfuge. It's a frugal centrifuge made out of cardboard and string, which enables the centrifugation of a finger prick blood sample for hematocrit measurement or the extraction of plasma for plasma-based diagnostics. The second is the teacup or organize espresso device. It's a device which uses a simple upcycled aluminum coffee capsule and phase change material. And the assembly is able to maintain a temperature of 65 degrees for 25 minutes to deliver an isothermal DNA amplification. In both cases, the devices use widely available or upcycled material that are extremely cheap to produce. While without a doubt, their use in actual human clinical diagnostic systems needs to be properly investigated and regulated. It's really their capacity to inspire that I want to draw your attention to today. These devices and their associated methods can also be used to educate, empower, and inspire the next generation of bioengineers to invent the diagnostics of the future, robust, low cost, and using sustainable material, and designs that can be locally owned and locally produced. So why is a network needed? Why can't we just work on our own? Well, that is what many of us do very well, but it's very clear, I think, to all of us that we need an international outlook to develop relevant solutions in this particular area. So we need to involve many different disciplines. We need knowledge transfer in multiple directions, in geographical and different disciplines. And so while we're all working on great local projects, our actions are fragmented, and the network can help us leverage synergies between multiple stakeholders effectively and importantly at scale. So what the network can deliver, it's really to help us to create an ecosystem to deliver co-created frugal diagnostic solutions. Some of the things we're really keen on is to leverage the global Fab Lab network and some other technology networks that Harry mentions, the wetware networks such as the Open Bioeconomy Reclone, which are creating open access reagents that could go with the sort of hardware that the Frugal Diagnostic Network could support. And the network will also help us to develop open access teaching and training resources. It could, answer questions like what is needed to transform a Fab Lab into a frugal diagnostic lab for a day or a week or longer. So what else the network could help us for? The breakout sessions, are there for this. So now, just a few words on funding, and then I will move to the talks. So currently we have three main sources of funding: the Royal Academy of Engineering, CUNE Foundation, and the DIADEF project. We need more funding. If you've got ideas on how we could acquire funding to support the network and to support the delivery of a hands-on workshop, please share your ideas in the breakout session and on the mirror boards. All right, so now I'm delighted to host for the launch of the network 2 short talks that are really meant to set up the scene and highlight some of the challenges facing the diagnostic industry today. So Shannon, if you can maybe give control to Collins, please. So due to time constraints, we will not be able to take questions, I'm afraid. However, do feel free to engage with the speakers if you are with them in the breakout rooms. We can also use the chat to interact with other fellow attendees, and you can paste your questions there. They will be captured and they could be answered at a later stage. So thank you very much for your patience on this. So now I'm really honored to have with us Dr. Collins Otieno from the African Society of Laboratory Medicine. Collins holds a PhD in medical virology and has over 20 years laboratory management and research experience. And he's the project lead for the Laboratory System Strengthening Community of Practice known as LabCOP, a project at the ASLM. So Collins will give us a perspective on diagnostic access in the global south. Over to you, Collins. I hope you have control of the slides. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Maywin. And in the interest of bandwidth, I will stop sharing my video. So thank you for inviting me to give a talk on this very exciting network. And I'm going to talk to you about ensuring diagnostic access in Africa. So as a way of introduction, laboratory systems and networks have really been strengthened in the last 10 to 15 years. And this is because of the big funding received for TB, HIV, and the malaria programs in Africa. And we also know that we continue to see some outbreaks which are very unpredictable and also potentially devastating, like the Ebola outbreak recently in Uganda and also Congo, and also the COVID-19 that devastated the whole continent. From the African CDC, we know that annually 140 disease outbreaks are detected on the continent. And in terms of diagnostics, Africa generally relies on other regions for these medical supplies and also diagnostics. So that's put into question why we do not consider the local context when diagnostics are manufactured. And there are some issues that are emerging that need us to focus more on how we can look at the local context as we continue R&D. So one example is that Africa can be the last line in terms of access to diagnostics, especially in emergency situations. That figure on the left indicates the number of COVID-19 tests that was performed. And you can see that Africa is the one that is lagging behind in terms of the number of tests compared to other regions of the world. Some diagnostics have been introduced within the African continent and not considering the policy landscape that exists to deal with some of issues like waste. So we have a big problem now with guanidinium thiocyanate waste from the viral load testing laboratories that produce that liquid waste, and also from decentralized settings where we have cartridges that contain guanidinium thiocyanate. There are also circumstances where there are inaccuracies in terms of diagnostics, and one report from Benin showed that commercial test, an ELISA test, showed up to 25% non-specific reaction, and this was attributed to the malaria antigens that were present in a number of individuals within that area. Some diagnostics will also be manufactured to be at the point of care, but without considering what the infrastructure is there. For example, electricity and even the workforce. So in terms of access to diagnostic, this still remains a challenge. The Lancet Commission in 2021 produced a report that showed that only 19% of the population in low to middle income countries have access to the simplest of diagnostic tests other than HIV and malaria. And so we think some of these access issues can be addressed by local manufacturing of some of these diagnostics, because they can help in terms of addressing that risk and also producing very specific diagnostics for those endemic diseases that might not be a problem in the West. Local manufacturing could as well help in terms of supply chain security, as we have seen during emergency situations. However, in terms of production and importation, so there's an imbalance between the African countries and the West, and we see that Africa is a net importer of medical diagnostic and pharmaceutical products, up to a fivefold difference in terms of importation and exportation. But we see that there's been some progress in terms of local manufacturing. So that figure there is a map of Africa, and the darker the color shows the number of companies that are locally manufacturing diagnostics. And we can see South Africa has a strong market. We also see Egypt, and in the north we see Morocco and Algeria, and in the west Senegal and Nigeria, and some manufacturing in the East African region. Most importantly, most of these companies are actually headquartered in Africa, showing that, yeah, they are fully local and they have access to the raw material and the intellectual property rights for these diagnostics. In terms of the disease areas, yeah, the main manufacturing was for COVID, HIV and malaria as expected, but we also see Ebola, we also see chikungunya, but we need to ramp up some of these diagnostics for those endemic diseases. So what are some of the barriers to local manufacturing? So one is the lack of political will and also support to invest in test manufacturing locally. There's lack of investment and financing, and even creating an enabling environment in terms of policies, in terms of tax breaks, so that we promote local manufacturing. There's also difficulty in terms of validation and even registration of tests. There's a lot of bureaucracy in terms of registration of tests. More importantly, there's difficulty in terms of access to the market, because the market generally prefers imported diagnostics and have questionable attitude towards what is manufactured locally. And as has been outlined in the introductory slides, there's a brain drain. So there's lack of technical skilled scientists and even technicians, and even those who can help in terms of creating regulatory bodies to look at local manufacturing. So how can we improve local manufacturing of diagnostics? We need first to create an enabling funding and procurement environment to promote this. We need to offer the market to the manufacturers. We need to promote open intellectual property sharing rather than just technology transfer. We need to ensure that local production will be sustainable in the long run, and that we can provide a market to them, and also to meet the local needs that we have. We also need to strengthen regulatory mechanisms and also the public trust to these locally manufactured products, as I have mentioned. So who is the ASLM and how can we support in terms of R&D in the African continent? So the African Society of Laboratory Medicine, ASLM, was established in 2011 through an interministerial agreement of Ministry of Health countries that tasked ASLM to enhance the professional laboratory practice, science, and network in Africa. So ASLM mainly is involved in terms of building capacity for the laboratory within Africa, so the networks. We also support the workforce, we support quality, we support regulation, and also communication. So what are some of our value propositions? So ASLM is a leading technical expert in laboratory medicine in Africa, and we have well-established partnerships, including with the African CDC, and we also have credibility with the local governments and other partners. We are a convener and we are an advocate for the agenda of the laboratory, and we also a facilitator of regulation as we help in terms of development, interpretation, and application of standards, policies, and guidelines, and harmonization in the laboratory medicine space. We also provide technical support in terms of producing evidence-based and rapid startup and rollout of continental-wide laboratory and diagnostic programs within this continent. So based on our value proposition, what is our role in terms of promoting local manufacturing? We try to facilitate and regulate in terms of broadening the use of validation tools for new diagnostics. We also host a diagnostic evidence hub where we upload technical information for different diagnostics that is accessible to members of the African continent whenever they want to get a diagnostic. We are leader in terms of developing frameworks, guidelines, and policies, and we can help in terms of developing such for local manufacturing. In terms of dissemination of information, we have a number of communication channels. We have an annual conference where we disseminate some of this. So this year we have a conference in December in Cape Town. We also have a peer-reviewed journal, the African Journal of Laboratory Medicine, and we have a lab culture magazine. And through the eco sessions or webinars of the Laboratory System Strengthening Community of Practice, we are able to disseminate this knowledge whenever we are approached. We also can help in translating practice to standards, including supporting production of locally relevant data for new technologies, and also coordinating the work with centers of excellence where these diagnostics can be evaluated. Lastly, we are an organization that advocate for the improvement of access to diagnostics, and we have supported this through developing guidance documents for rolling out point of care testing. And we are also advocating to the countries to develop essential diagnostics list that is based on evidence that takes into account what are the diseases within their settings and how are they going to be diagnosed. Otherwise, thank you so much. And yeah, I look forward to engaging more on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Collins. That was a brilliant overview in a really short amount of time. There were really important information in those slides. And the ASLM provides fantastic resources. So thank you so much for your time and the support that you've brought. So now to continue setting up the scene, I'm really delighted to introduce Sibusiso Ndlovu, an epidemiologist and laboratory advisor with Médecins Sans Frontières, or MSF, So Zipposiso provides strategic and technical advice to different projects for MSF in Sub-Saharan Africa and Asia. And he's got a vast experience in global health implementation, science research, and advocacy. So he will pick up on some of the same themes that Collins had just now and expand a little bit on why involving the users is really important. So Shannon, if you could get control to Zipposiso, and Zipposiso, over to you now. Thank you.
Thanks, Maiwen. So essentially, I think if we were to further improve the impact of point-of-care tests or diagnostics in general on patient outcomes, developers and adopters of these tests need to think of the value concepts, or maybe I should call it value proposition, across from the development to adoption continuum. So I put in quotes the word value concepts, but essentially what we're saying here is that the focus when we're designing and adopting diagnostic tests shouldn't merely be solving clinical problems, but we also need to look at achieving value-based outcomes that are important to all stakeholders, who not only include patients, but also those who are using the technology. So what do we essentially want? We want, as adopters, fit for purpose diagnostic tests that get developed closer to the populations. And these are the populations who have the highest disease burden. And when I say fit for purpose, it's essentially diagnostics that are not in a way affected by comorbid conditions, as we have seen that some diagnostics that are designed for other populations may not work very well in other populations. And so these diagnostic tests, we need them to undergo adequate evaluations within, closer to the patients who have the diseases. We want policies to be formulated based on evidence from evaluations. We want these policies to be implemented in countries, and ultimately we want to see the impact on the burden of disease. However, there is still limited local and or regional production of these diagnostics. And yet, for example, Africa has got a very big market of over 1 billion people. And there's also a limited engagement at the moment of test users within the cycle of production of these diagnostics. And there's less consideration given to the end life of diagnostics products, as we have seen in many countries in the region and beyond. There's a lot of white elephants of these diagnostic machines that have gathered dust after the end of life, and there's no know-how on how to take care of that. And also there's limited at the moment exploration among developers of the impact that the test may have beyond the patient. I think Collins has already mentioned this, for example, with viral load, the waste that is generated when one conducts viral load. That waste is very toxic, and there's very limited clarity at the moment, which in terms of how the countries need to deal with this. So essentially, at the moment, there is lots of favorable literature on how to improve adoption of point-of-care tests, and also how to include end users in the development of these tests. So in many instances, we see that devices can meet the clinical requirements, but they can still fail to be adopted successfully in different regions. And we see that the perspective of potential adopters in determining whether these new devices provides value is very important. And this article from Brenda that I'm mentioning, I've shown here, it argues that incorporating the value concepts into decisions across the full spectrum from development to adoption can increase the likelihood of higher impact. And also this other slide that I show, I mean, the other manuscript that I show there from Melissa, this one also talks about that the fact that diagnostic developers often face challenges in the introduction of diagnostics in low and middle income countries, be it related to robust market data or navigation in policy and the like. And if you see the other slide that I show there, it's a mixture of evidence that also looks at the other side of the coin, that the adopters themselves need to also be ready to show the frameworks of how these tools will be utilized, how they can add value into patients' life. But ultimately, the exciting thing from this slide, of course, is that we're seeing more and more global agencies and partners like Unitate who are coming up front, more or less support this idea of local production and involving adopters within the whole sphere of value creation. So there is a bit of will, but there's momentum that needs to happen stronger, as already Collins mentioned. So definitely, the value chain in the production of diagnostics from the manufacturer's perspective is quite fragmented at the moment, as I've already mentioned, and in many low and middle income countries, there is a lot of challenges, but there is a lot of opportunities for improving the value chain. And this is where we're hoping that this network can also help to shed light and provide some mentoring on how to improve and bring the research and development of these tests closer to where patients with diseases are. This schema shows a valley of deaths in the design of TB diagnostics. And essentially, there's many structures throughout the development life cycle that need to be bypassed. And as you can see from the left side, I highlight there in a little circle that the weak user involvement is another valley of death that we have seen for other diagnostic products that sometimes fail to see the day of light in commercialization. And it's very crucial that users are involved in the development of these. And now there's also a list of other valleys of death from commercialization to rollout, as you see. So this schema is quite useful to reflect on. But if I'm to add right now, what we're facing also is lack of focus, as I've mentioned, of waste management, which in itself can be a value of death that some of the diagnostic tools that we have seen sometimes do not reach their maximum usability because there is lack of focus on the waste management from the developers and the lack of engagement of the end users in helping to provide clarity on that. So if I'm to give one quick example now, majority of diagnostics that we deal with in the laboratory, they produce a lot of waste, but this has already been touched on by Collins. But one quick example that we have seen is from the experience of MSF in scaling viral load for monitoring antiretroviral treatment. And we see from our experiences more than 10 years ago, we scaled up through using laboratory-based instruments together with near point of care instruments. And this waste essentially needs to be incinerated in high temperatures. You can read more about this, and these pictures come from a nice paper written by Alice Street and colleagues. Essentially, you find that most of these countries that we're having these diagnostic tools not have capability to incinerate these at high temperatures, and they end up pouring either into sinks in the laboratories or it goes into public open spaces for waste. So essentially, there's still need for strengthening this, but also involving the end user in when these tools are designed, so that there's a better understanding of how to deal with the waste that comes from these, instead of just simple having manufacturers merely say that users should follow local guidelines, because in most instances these local guidelines are non-existent and there's no infrastructure, no expertise to deal with this. I think as a last point to conclude there, essentially I think there's a need for developers to consider the introduction of point of care tests and ensure that end users are involved, and end users with the view of understanding the value chain that not only looks at the clinical aspect of the test, but generally overall at the whole sphere. And as already Collins mentioned, there's a lot of opportunities and challenges, but we look forward to this network providing support to ensure that research and development for these diagnostic tests gets closer to patients. Thank you. I'll hand over back to you, Maiwen.
Thank you very much, Sisu, for really a great flash talk on the social life of diagnostics, and also great to hear from Collins on his presentation on the perspectives of developing diagnostics for emerging pathogens, most importantly. Now it's time for us to break out into breakout rooms, and we have some few rules of engagement to help us really maximize that connection and interaction. The first on the list is one conversation at a time. Very important to respect that we are working and trying to build a community, and therefore tolerance is key. We also encourage as many ideas as much as possible. You can do that through Miro board as well, and also there's the chat session which you can use to do that. We encourage all ideas regardless of how unlikely they may appear at first. The next would be to use visual as much as possible to record your ideas or your suggestions, and they can come in a form of text. And the last but not the least will be feel free to respond to any questions, and in as much as we are trying to have these discourses within the breakouts, don't sound judgmental when trying to respond to feedback when doing that. And this may, I believe this would be a golden rule for ideation, which is always would be a way to separate great ideas as much as possible. Last thing to mention would be the use of Miro board. We are trying as much as possible to collect ideas on how we can form the network. Please, if you haven't done that yet, get on Miro board, quickly sign up and feel free to contribute on the boards that we have in there. And in some few minutes, we're going to have launch ourselves into the breakout rooms. And soon after that, we will all reconvene into the main room for a wrap-up. Thank you very much, and see you all soon. If you also have any trouble, just send us a message in chat, and we would have you sent into a breakout room. We currently are assigning participants to breakout rooms for your conversations to get started. We have chairs that would be facilitating the conversations within the breakout rooms.
Yeah, so while some of us are still waiting to be assigned to the breakouts, the Miro website's address is there in the chat. I'll just put it in the chat again. You can go on there and see the questions and start grabbing a post-it note and putting some comments there.
Hello. Hello, Shannon.
Hello. Hi.
Hello,
Is this
Shannon.
who is this? Sorry.
This is Rosemont. I'm supposed to be in the breakout room with Dr. Elena Rosca. I'm supposed to assist her as described.
Yeah, I'm looking for you right now in the room. Sorry, I had them all organized and then I think somebody started them and reset everything. So I'm trying to find, okay. And you're supposed to be in room 2. Yeah.
I think room 2 doesn't have Dr. Elena Rosca in there. I think she's in another room.
Okay. Yeah, Elena. No, I'm trying to find Elena. I don't know where people have all put themselves. Yep, she's in room 5. Okay, I will move you to room 5.
Okay, thank you.
So I think I clicked on the thing to return us back. So while everybody else is coming back, sorry about that. I misread as I was trying to speak at the same time. So I know that Maywen has been, and we've been working on creating some hands-on workshops. And I think that we're planning, or we're working on developing one for December. And we will have, until then, we will have monthly meetings or monthly events, something like this, that we can all come together and discuss. But if you could, to keep in mind and continue on to put ideas on the Miro board, and hopefully through Slack when that comes in, so we can keep that going. Paul, did you wanted to say something and I interrupted? Sorry.
No, sorry.
All right, then I think I'll leave it like that since everybody's returning back.
Yes, thank you. I think it's possibly really interesting conversations happening within the much. Understand that it's still open, and you can feel free to still keep on contributing your ideas on there, and we will get to have them and continue to see how we would make all of this contribution worthwhile for the network we're trying to build. I think as a way of wrapping up the first meet and greet and also the launch of the network, I think it's been really interesting conversations that you all have been having within your breakouts. We started off having really interesting flash talks from two amazing people within the fragmented network, which we're trying to pull together. And I think you already have seen some perspective of what is happening within the Global South and possibly elsewhere, and what has been happening so far. Also, we saw a presentation from Dr. Otieno and also from Collins on the social life of diagnostics. And I think that all of this puts things into perspective of why the network is really important. There have been calls on what we need to do in terms of having a local manufacturing for diagnostics. We also have seen how it is important to develop curricula that would ensure that we have the best of knowledge retained on the continent to solve the problems in terms of developing diagnostics and also ensuring that the equity around all of these things are taken care of. And I think this is just the right time to have all of this done. The next line of things, we would be looking at people who are interested in helping support the network in fundraising roles. We will also for having the network to stay afloat. So please watch out for events that we're going to be organizing. And we would be requesting people who are interested in presenting topics of interest to the network to sign up when we call on that. Other activities would be rolling out soon. And I don't know if at this point, probably Maureen want to briefly jump in to add a few things to the next steps.
All right, so we'll create a platform. Sorry, can you hear me? Yes.
All right.
We will create a platform. Please do tell us your preferred format on Miro if you hadn't had the chance yet. There will be a meeting dates in June, August, and October. All of these will be virtual as today, with more focused theme for each of the meeting. And in December, we're planning an in-person meeting in Ghana, most probably. So please do let us know if you're interested in joining all of these. Please be on the lookout for emails and then interact on the platform as well. We're really glad that you have joined us today. I've really enjoyed the discussion in the breakout rooms and the flash talks, and I hope to see you all again very soon. Thank you very much. Have a good day, you all. Bye.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
everyone, and bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.
Everyone.
Bye bye. Thank you.